Good morning. Thank you for everyone who was able to sign in and attend the webinar this morning. This webinar is over the justification for exceeding 1% of your testing population for students taking the alternate assessment. Today's agenda, we're going to do a brief overview of what the OAAP is. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. I'll go over the participation cap and waiver, the justification survey itself, and then any questions you might have. And if you need to contact me, there's my email address, there's my direct line to my office as well, and then that'll be on another additional slide at the end. So the Oklahoma Alternate Assessment Program is a component of the Oklahoma School Testing Program and is designed for students with the most significant cognitive disabilities, and it mirrors, the OAAP mirrors the OSTP in subject areas and grades assessed. In order for a student to participate in the OAAP, they must have met the participation requirements. There's a criteria checklist for establishing whether or not the student should participate in the alternate assessment. And a large part of that is, the adaptive behavior piece of the student. Are they going to need lifelong support, supervision, safety? Those types of things are kind of a question. And they have significant cognitive deficits. And again, that would need to be based off current evaluation data. And for a student to participate in the OAAP, ultimately that comes down to it's an IEP team decision. Excuse me. These students generally represent 1% of the total tested population of students, and that 1% number is based off a national average. So Oklahoma, for the past 2 years, 3 years, we've exceeded that 1% participation. So OSDE last year was granted a waiver, and it's within that waiver there's certain requirements that OSDE must fulfill, and we've kind of completed those requirements. And so this last December we applied for a waiver extension, and we don't have the results of that waiver yet, but we're anticipating most likely it will be approved. And within these waiver requests, the main component is Oklahoma must demonstrate growth towards that 1%. So I think 2 or 3 years ago we were at 1.67 at last testing window. Our preliminary data showed, I think, 1.65. So we're making some growth, not as much growth as we would like. So one of the components for the waiver, again, is this justification for exceeding the 1% that the districts need to complete. So kind of the rationale for why, the reasons for why they're exceeding 1% of their total testing population. Students are taking the OAAP. December 12th, through the assessment listserv, hopefully you received this email, this notification. It's going through the pre-code, and so that's how we send out, that's the first way we send out this notification that if your district is expecting to test more than 1% of your student testing population with the OAAP, then the district needs to complete a justification survey prior to February 6th. So this is what it should have looked like, this portion of it. It's where it was first, you should have received notification, December 12th. And so the justification survey, The main thing is, again, this is for districts that anticipate exceeding 1%. So based off your pre-code data, you should be able to identify the students who are taking the OAP, and find out, see if, your district is exceeding that 1%. If you're on the bubble, it may be best practice to go ahead and complete the justification survey, even though, you might have a move-in student, or you don't never know if a student's going to transfer out of the district. But I would say best practice would be go ahead and complete the justification survey instead of, not completing it, exceeding the 1%, and then falling into, a tier that has to complete some type of monitoring activity or these oversight activities. So again, I would say if you are on the bubble, go ahead and complete the survey. Again, the surveys are due February 6th. Last year, we sent out emails to all the districts, I believe July, August, and they were due in August. And it was just basically a 2-page form that the district completed. So this online survey is taking the place of that. So there won't be an additional justification statements that districts need to complete like you completed at the beginning of this year. So this online survey is replacing that. And it's just more of, I think this is kind of what the feds kind of had in mind, as it to be kind of a preventative tool, so districts can kind of look a little bit closer at the students who are participating in the OAP prior to the start of the testing window, to really see, if the students are placed in the assessment that is most appropriate for them. So on the link that was sent out through the Office of Assessments, through the pre-code notification, that link takes you to the survey itself. But there's an additional webpage that's on our special education website that I'll take you to, where you can find a lot of the tools that are needed for completing the survey. So again, the survey is online. There's a template that I'll take you to. The template includes a formula for calculating your OAP participation percentage. There's some questions on there that I'll go over. One question that I've received a few times is about the disproportionality piece. And then it also asks the districts to enter in previous OAP percentages to see if your district's making strides towards that 1%, or if you're increasing. A lot of these smaller districts, if you have 2 or 3 new students move in, or a family, it's really gonna spike your testing percentage. But larger districts should be a little bit more stable, so you should see what those trends look like. So I'll take you to that website right now. So here is the special education homepage. If you go to services, special education, this will take you to our special education homepage. And on the homepage, you'll see the heading OAP 1% waiver. And here is the link to that resource page. So this first link is to the survey itself. The second link is for the webinar today, and this link will be replaced by with the recorded webinar. So eventually this link will change. Down here, you'll find the template. So this template isn't anything that you would turn in to the State Department. It's just a tool that you can use to fill out, maybe with your staff, get together, collaborate, and answer these questions together prior to starting the online survey. But again, if you start the online survey, I believe you can pick up where you left off. However, I don't think you can go back and change your answers with the online survey. If you do make a mistake with the online survey and you need to start over, you can contact me. I can erase your previous submission, and then you can start over. Or I also believe if you use a different browser, you may be able to start the survey over. then I can go in and see the incompleted survey. You can contact me and I can remove the incompleted survey. But here's the template. So the first question is, did all IEP teams use the OAP participation guidelines found in the criteria checklist for assessing students with disabilities on alternate assessments to make participation decisions? So these students should have the criteria checklist completed as part of their IEP. We have found this last testing session students who didn't have criteria checklist completed who took the OAP. So that's a big thing to double check. Our IEP team's confident when applying OAP criteria guidelines when making assessment participation decisions. And that's just something that you're going to answer based off kind of how you feel. And then the follow-up question is just for us to know what type of resources we can provide to help IEP teams better make these decisions. Third question, small district sizes impact OAP participation percentages. A district with a testing population of 180 students as 2 students would exceed that 1%. And so what is your district's projected testing population for this spring window? And again, if that is off, if it ends up being different, it's not a big deal. Again, this is just for districts that are anticipating exceeding the 1%. Question number 4, is there a medical facility, care home, group home within your district that impacts the number of students participating in the OAP? So this is kind of one of those contextual factors. So please describe the care facility. And throughout this entire survey, you need to avoid using any personally identifiable information. For example, we had a 4th grade student, Billy Smith, move in, and and this is why we went over, because the student moved in. These surveys are made available to the public, which is one of the requirements of the justification or of our waiver application, is to make these surveys available to the public. Last year's justification statements are available to the public. People can make a request to view those. So you'll want to avoid using any personally identifiable information throughout the survey. Question number 5, are there any other unique factors to your district that might cause an unusual spike in the number of students participating in the OAP? So anything else that you might think of that can kind of affect the number of students participating that might be unique to your district? Question number 6, district level data into the percentage of OAP assessments for math and ELA for the 2018-19 school year. This is for math and ELA. And so you should be expecting to exceed that 1% for 2020. And so to calculate, see if you're going to exceed the 1%, it's the number of OAP students over your total testing population. And then you would multiply that number by 100, and that would give you your percentage. And there's an example. So you would do this for math and ELA for 2020, 2019, 2018. Question number 7, does the district have a current plan, or is the district developing a plan to increase IEP teams' capacity for identifying the most appropriate assessments for students with disabilities? So is this something that your district has already addressed? How so? If not, just be transparent and honest. If so, what is the district's specific measurable goal in addressing decision-making for identifying the correct students for the OAP? And again, do not use any personally identifiable information. Part B, describe the process, training, and steps the district will use to meet the percentage goal reduction proposed above. So maybe you've had a group of people establish, what you would like that percentage to look like over the course of the next 1 to 2 years. You can kind of describe how you came to that conclusion. And then second part, include how teachers of students with significant cognitive disabilities are included in the goal development and implementation of the plan. So we felt like it's important to include the teachers of those students in this type of decision-making process. Question number 8, disproportionality. Are there any significant differences between the subgroups of students participating in the OAP compared to the OSTP? Explain how the district is addressing disproportionality identified in areas that include but not are related to, but are limited to the student's IEP disability category, grade level, race, and gender for students participating in the OAP. Again, smaller districts, it's going to be difficult to really kind of address this just because your numbers are so low. Disproportionality really isn't going to exist there in these smaller districts. The larger districts, hopefully there's something already being done to kind of look at those numbers to see if disproportionality exists. One thing that we will be doing is looking at last year's testing data for all the districts and seeing if disproportionality does exist between the OAP population and the OSTP population. If it does exist, we will be contacting those districts and they will be addressing it. So that's something that's going to be an additional thing. I've talked to our data person, and I mean, she estimates there might be 10 to 15 districts where there's enough students to really be able to even identify whether or not disproportionality exists. And then within those, 15 districts, does it exist? So we're talking about a very small number of districts where it might actually exist. But again, it's important to look at your general population of students and then your OAP population of students and see if, are there disproportionate groups or subgroups of students represented in the OAP compared to the OSTP. So that's something that a district can be aware of. Maybe, the definition of disproportionality isn't met based off, the numbers in the formula, but it is something that the district's aware of and is working towards, in terms of equity for all students. Number 9, parent participation. How does the district support parents in participating in the IEP team decisions for their child to participate in the OAP? One thing that we've done with this is a parent brochure. So for those students with the new IEPs, there's a box on the IEP to make sure that the students' parents receive the OAP parent brochure. So that's one thing you can get and include on there. Back to the PowerPoint if I can.
Over to the right, just put down on the right screen, just put down here to hit that little projection screen right there. Yep. Again. There it is.
Okay. One thing also I should show you that I failed to mention. Let me go back. On the resource page, you will see OAP percentages by district, county, and region down here. So this will give you some historical data for your own district, but it's also an opportunity to see how your district compares to other districts in your county, in your region. So say, there's not some type of unique medical facility, and your county is pretty evenly distributed. Student-wise, and you have another district in that county, you can compare your numbers to another district. So, you can come, I'll go, I need to, there. So for a region, for example, they should be able to see the screen. Is that right, Gary? So in the central region, you can find your district and see how it might compare. You can narrow it down by whatever you would like to narrow it down by. Go to Cleveland County. So this is just an example. So here are the districts in Cleveland County. And then here are the OAP percentages, and we have it broken down by math and reading, which math and reading is always going to be very close. It's required, all grade levels. So it's going to be very close. So we just group those two subjects together. You can compare your district to other districts and see kind of what your district looks like, and then you can look at your trend as well. So 15, 16 math and reading, 16, 17 math and reading, 17, 18. So for example, this district it looks like they've gone down for math and reading. Science is always going to be a little bit different because it's a smaller, smaller population of students. And since it's such a smaller population of students, one or two students can make a big difference. So in the survey, the science, you don't have to enter in your science data, but we included science in this spreadsheet just so, it's another point of reference you can look at. Okay. Technical issues, like I mentioned earlier, if you need to start the survey over, try using a different browser. You can't go back and re-answer a different question, but you can start it over, and I can erase, delete your previous, when you wanted to start it, I can erase that, delete it. General questions, always feel free to contact me with any type of questions you have. Moving forward, districts will be notified in March of any additional oversight requirements, and we're going to be looking at last year's OAP percentages, and we'll look at trends, divide those districts into tiers, and then see if there's any, like it was last year, see if there's any oversight activities that your district might need to complete. But this piece should already be taken care of, so that will be big in identifying, these oversight activities for our districts. Disproportionality, there will be a few districts that we'll be contacting that will need to address disproportionality, but again, it's only going to be the larger districts. Questions, if you have any questions about this, feel free to email me or call me. That's the direct line to my office. I try to return phone calls, within 24 hours, if not within that day when I get them. So if you have any questions right now, we can open it up for questions as well.
You'll see a chat box. Nope. Because you do have one. Is there a way for us to print off our completed surveys?
You can contact me, and I can email you that completed survey, how it looks. We use Qualtrics for the online survey, so I would need to go into Qualtrics and find that submission, and then I can email that to you. You can print it off that way. But again, the template is a good resource to use as well. But it wouldn't necessarily be your, the actual submission. But I can get that to you if you email me. Kathy says the numbers will not be consistent because every grade does not test. Is that taken into consideration? So it's based off your student testing population. So that's going to be grades 3 through 8, grade 11, and then it's broken down by subject area. So you'd have, based off all those grades, you'd have a percentage for ELA, math, and science. So for some of the districts, maybe you have a higher population of 8th grade students that tested last year. So those 8th grade students are now in 9th grade, and they're not going to be participating in the testing program this year. So that would, generally most likely make your numbers go down unless you have new students move in. So those are all factors that we take into consideration as well. Hopefully that answers your question. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe, historically you've been below 1%, and then, you have a younger group of students who are now in 3rd grade, and they're going to, you're going to go over that 1%. So again, we look at trends, in the data to kind of make these decisions. So those are taken into consideration. Okay. Are there any other questions? All right. Again, feel free to contact me, and I appreciate everyone who attended today's webinar.